Hi, everybody. I'm Rose Sweet, and we are here today on our Catholic Match Live. I'm so excited because we have a success story to share today. And I will introduce you to Chris and Eva Delia. And I'll tell you first a little bit about how I met Chris when he was on Catholic Match and not having such an easy time. So sit back, take notes, and remember, do your questions in the little question comment box because at the end we will take some questions and we're going to leave you with some good, uplifting words of advice for those of you who are still looking for your forever love. Okay, so Chris, you and I met. You decided to hire me as a relationship coach because you were dating after divorce and you wanted to do it right. Tell me why you reached out to me.
Well, as you say, I decided after I received my annulment that if I was going to re-enter the realm of dating and the possibility of vocation of marriage, that I quickly discerned, well, what's dating for? And ultimately, dating, there's a lot of secondary reasons for it, purposes, but the primary purpose is to find your spouse, hopefully, especially as a Catholic. So what did that mean? Like I had come off of a marriage that was, as I said, not valid, and it was quite secular. I had a major conversion and became quite a serious Catholic, and I wanted to know what it meant to do it the right way from a practical sense. I was very, at the time I reached out to you, I was well read on theology of the body and all this theology is all in my head. But to actually go into the world and talk to a real live woman and engage in a real life courtship and all the things that could potentially come of it, well, how does a Catholic navigate that, especially in today's world? So I felt like I needed to reach out to a person of wisdom like you. That I've listened to you on Catholic Answers quite a bit. That's how I discovered you, and I always loved your time on there and what you had to say. So I felt I heard that you did the coaching thing. I was like, oh, perfect. So as I'm going through these muddied waters and trying to navigate my spiritual life with my romantic life, I felt like I needed a sounding board to help me steer the ship, I guess, through there.
Did you feel it was good that I was a woman because I could give the woman's viewpoint to your masculine viewpoint?
I saw you as coach first, and
Mm,
woman
mm,
second. I would
mm,
say,
mm, mm.
I think as our conversations unfolded, the woman's perspective that you offered, it was like like irreplaceable bonus. It was really, yeah, it was like very serendipitous that happened to be. I wasn't really thinking about that dynamic in the first place. So yeah, it was amazing to hear that perspective of how things might be received if you're operating in a relationship, whether it's early stages, middle, or late. How is it being received from the female side?
Yeah,
Which is
I
what I've always struggled with, I guess.
yeah, I remember you were having some bumps in the road, and I felt very maternal toward you, or big sister at least, and um, you were courageous and manly and brave to own your own stuff and to want to get rid of your excess baggage and do it right. It wasn't just, I want to do it right so I can find her. It was, you knew that you needed to make sure that you were everything that you could offer a woman, from a Catholic perspective. And I love that about you. It was tough sometimes. Um, but it was really good. And I was proud of your fortitude and your steadfastness. And look what you found, Ava. Ava, aren't you happy? Ava, just briefly, tell us what you were doing on Catholic Match.
Well, I've heard about Catholic Match from a friend years and years ago. She told me about her experience. We talked a little bit about that. We work with Catholics. I'm from Mexico, so being Catholic is just something huge for us, and that's the way that I was brought up. So back then, it was kind of interesting for me to hear about it, but I wasn't like really what's that, or the being curious about it. But then years later, I ran into, it was really funny because I was checking some information on my personal email, and then this app of CatholicMatch came out, and I was like, because it's been years since we talk about it or me being aware of it. And then I was like, okay, maybe something to consider having in the back, just, And then a few days later, I ran into that again. So I started to become a little bit curious about it. So anyway, a few days later, I decided to go in, and I was been single for 6 years already since my last relationship. And I decided that, okay, maybe this is a time, to just go in and meet new people, have the opportunity of, oh yeah, potentially maybe finding or meeting someone. And I signed up, right? I started just making friends and just getting to know more people. Of course, when I decided to do that, it was more from a place of, I've never done something like that. And I said, well, if I feel like I'm leaning towards that, is because I think it's somehow aligned to who I am and all of that, which was very important for me too, right? I said eventually, if that's the plan that God has for me, I want someone who has the same values and faith, which is the most important part.
What was your plan? What was your plan for happiness? Were you wanting marriage?
I was coming from a place of praying a lot. I think that was a big thing for me, because all those years as a single woman, I was doing all these things in trying to, is it right to get rid of all the baggage that I had from my previous relationship, my own personal life, and so on. So I actually came to a point that I was just happy to the place where I was, professional-wise, personal-wise, because I understood, that there are some things that may not be God's will. But at that point, I think that I was just so happy with who I was and where I was, that I just took the opportunity to, be out there and meet new people. But I wasn't sure if that was going to happen, because this friend of mine, for instance, who did it years before, she just met, people, she met a few friends, but nothing actually happened. And actually, I went through the site and read about all these stories, Sometimes you meet someone, sometimes you just friends, some people going in for a certain amount of time, then they log out, and then they come back a few years later or months or so on. But for me, I think it was more of meeting people, knowing, of course, the possibility of finding actually
So
someone.
would it be safe to say that you desired marriage, but you knew you could not force it and didn't have control over it? So you trusted God to help you in the meantime. Okay,
Yes.
wonderful, wonderful. Who reached out to who first?
I reached out to her first.
What happened? What did you do?
Well, she had this picture, and we call the actress Gal Gadot, but apparently it's Gal Gadot. So, and I just sent a simple text. I just said, "Hey, has anybody ever told you look like Gal Gadot?" Because this picture looked like it was this uncanny resemblance, and it was on her profile. And then I guess I hadn't heard. She didn't respond immediately, and then I guess it hit a funny bone with her. So, because she's a big movie buff and she likes all those Marvel, DC movies, and Gal Gadot is kind of a bit of a hero, kind of a thing. So it really hit a funny bone with her. So she just kind of laughed, and she sent me a friendly text back, and it was it's history.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go back to the point where she didn't respond right away. How long were you waiting before you got that response? Do you remember?
I had been doing the CatholicMatch thing for a couple of years, so you're lucky if you get any kind of response these days. Like you put these things out there, you don't know. I was kind of used to. I figured maybe she wouldn't respond. If that's the case, then fine. I was sort of at that place. I had been seasoned enough as a online dater, I guess, that it didn't ruffle my feathers too much. But I was hoping she would, of course, and it was such an amazing surprise when I saw a message in my inbox.
Ava, tell me what you remember about seeing his profile and looking at his photos and reading about him. What was exciting or interesting to you?
Um, how he explained who he was and what he believes in. I think that was one of the first things that captured me. I do gotta say that when he sent me that message about my resemblance to Gal Gadot, I laughed a little bit because I was like, I don't see it. But I thought that was funny, right? But then we started actually, I told him this before. I actually went into reading his profile. We started chatting and then sending some messages. I didn't look at his profile right away because I got caught up in the conversation, right? For some reason, I felt so compelled to say all these things. I'm actually a very private person, but for some reason, when I started talking to him, it was like, it felt really natural, like I known him for years, right? So we were like on, and then I remember like I don't know, a few days later, I said like, oh wait a minute, I haven't even looked at his profile, and that's when I went in and I started reading that. I started reading about his story and everything, and I felt something even more about the things that we were talking about. But I think I kind of identified something that I did too, which was trying to say exactly who I was. So I kind of like got that by reading his profile, and I felt like more um, confident and more like like I think I can make a good friend here because I felt that connection in terms of like I felt like I was doing the exact same thing, right? Just trying to put out there who I really was.
That was something very. I think that if you were to read both our profiles, the thing that comes out of both is this authenticity. Like when I remember sitting down writing the profile, it's like, okay, I'm going to speak to my future wife here. I'm gonna advertise myself in a way that my future wife, once she gets to know me, could read through this and say, okay, I see everything you're saying is who you are. I can see where all that came from. It's honest. You weren't trying to sell yourself in some way. So, both of us did, I think, had that same approach where we just sat down. We got ourselves into a bit of a vulnerable state. I think is key. This is who I am, and this is what I'm looking for, in the kindest way but honest way possible. And I think that we recognize the authenticity in both of our profiles enough
Okay,
to
so
the conversation going forward. Like our texts and everything it was all rooted in authenticity. We felt very comfortable right from the start being who we were. We didn't put up facades or anything like that.
did you share dirty laundry or regrets or anything negative like that pretty soon, or did you hold any of that back? Or it sounds like when you say you were authentic, you just let it out there as it was, right?
Yeah.
I was pretty quick, and I believe that anybody who's engaging in these things, you shouldn't have more than 2, maybe 3 text exchanges before you actually start talking to each other, because that type of thing that belongs to real conversation, one-on-one, face-to-face. I mean, I think the initial, glancing at somebody's profile, looking through their pictures, it's great and everything, gives you a little snapshot of a little peek in the window. A few texts, another little deeper peek in a window. But to get to those types of conversations, I think you've got to get to know a person in stages and let it develop.
How long did you talk and interact with each other before you were getting excited to really seeing each other in person?
Oof.
Oh wow!
Well, the first phone call, I was expecting like a 15 minutes or something, and because we wanted to hear more about one another, right? We talked for what, 2.5 hours, 3 hours,
Yeah.
and then from there.
I think it was after that first conversation. We started talking almost daily, or at least every other day, right away.
I remember, Chris. I remember when you told me about her, and it was kind of out of the blue because it happened kind of quickly, and you were very excited. I remember that. So,
Yeah, it was so exciting meeting somebody. Like I just felt like she's been my best friend all my life already, like so quickly. Of course, go through life and you meet people who you resonate with, and if you feel like you have that dynamic, but this was different.
Okay,
And
so when did you meet in person? How long from the time you connected first to when you?
better with the dates than I am, so you can ask her.
Come on, Eva.
A little bit over a month.
Okay. So were you guys talking almost every day before that?
Yeah, first it was a phone call, and then we started with video calls and things like that. And that was even better because of course we get to see more of when you're sharing about who you are and you see the other person how they're reacting to what you're saying and you're connecting, because of course it's not the same when you're just texting. And yeah, you can connect and so on. A phone call is great, but when you get to see the person, there's a different type of connection, right, that you start to develop, and what became while you're sharing and you're spending time, right? So yeah, I think there was a point where we were talking pretty much like this every day.
Okay, Ava, this is for the girls. You and me, come on, let's just. So you have your first video call. Did you make sure your hair was all perfect and your makeup? Come on.
Of course, sometimes I did, but I also, again, coming from this place of wanting to know me, who I was was also trying to keep that. There would be days when I just got out from work, and there were some days that were like easy days, and I will have enough time to work out and then come back and then get ready for my phone call. And I will tell him I just got from the gym, and I go close and so on. But of course, right, especially when you start to develop feelings like this person, you want them to see you from who you are, or else you want them to see you, with the hair and everything.
That
was most efficient.
Okay, so how long did you date after you met in person?
Yeah.
Is there somebody else there or something? Do you
Not
guys
here.
hear them?
No.
Yeah, we hear a voice.
But it's not here.
Okay, John, our background guy, will take care of that anyway.
Oh.
Okay, so now you meet in person for the first time. What happened when you got off the plane?
Okay. So
Yeah,
I went to
visit.
visit her, and
And you live in Canada, and you went down to Mexico.
she lived in Guadalajara, Mexico.
In Mexico.
And yeah, I went to visit her. I'm trying to remember. I remember going into the airport, to the terminal, and I expected her to be there. And I actually saw her first. And I saw her, I just had a feeling it was her. I didn't see her. She was deep in the crowd, but I knew it was her. And I pretended as if I didn't see her.
Yeah.
I could see her she then recognized me. I could see her making her way to me. And then it was such a surreal experience. And when we saw each other, I was like, I can't, because we had all these deep conversations, but we had a 2D relationship, and we couldn't wait for a 3D relationship, right? So it was like, I remember watching when what was it, Avatar first came out. I've always known Sigourney Weaver, for instance, as 2D, but then when you see Sigourney Weaver for the first time in 3D, it was like, oh my gosh, there's this mega superstar in 3D, and I found that it blew me away. It was 10 times more intense when I saw her.
And let me throw a little theology of the body out there, because I know you love TOB and you follow it and try to integrate it. It's the word becomes flesh. So now the words that you shared on the video calls and the phone calls, those words became the fullness of the flesh of the human person. And that is something that we all can't wait for.
We always refer to as real presence.
Right.
Yeah, it is good. Good. Say that again. You refer to it as the
real presence.
Okay, right. So this is where our Catholic faith comes in, that we're made for that. Okay. So now, Eva, when is the first time you went back to Canada?
That was a month and a half after he was visiting Mexico. Okay. Yeah, that was at a trip too. I have been in Canada before, because actually years ago, about 6 years ago, I was doing this vacation tour with my niece for like 10 days, because Canada was one of the places that I always wanted to visit. for some reason, I was really attracted to coming here. So I was kind of familiar with the place. But yeah, like a month and a half later, I was visiting him here in Canada.
And what did you think? Because he'd been married before and had kids. Did you meet the kids on that trip?
No, I met his parents and some of the coworkers, and
And was that, Chris, was that by design?
Absolutely. And we discussed this beforehand. And I sort of made a vow to myself, and I wanted to be responsible. It's like, so dating again, what's the purpose of dating? It's to find your future spouse, and which is the single most important relationship in your life, period.
Mhm.
It's more important than kids even. So I felt like in this discernment period, we needed to focus on each other. And then when we got to that point where it's just like, okay, it's a pretty sure thing that we're going to be together, then that seemed to be more appropriate to bring the children into the fold.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Okay, so how long did you date? Now you see each other in person until the proposal, or with before proposal, was there talk of marriage?
boy, would be the 101 question.
We were very intentional. We both, like, we recognized early on that we're very much in love, and we're no spring chickens. We know that this is either going to go towards marriage or it's not. So all right, so I invited her to read this book together. It was it was a Christian book. It was like 101 questions for people who are discerning marriage. And it was, what an exercise that was. Like, we had so many interesting conversations, and we really, I mean, they make you ask the hard questions. So I feel like when you, and the one good thing about this long distance thing, when you're on FaceTime, you are really focused, having you're not out bowling and mini putting and watching movies and falling asleep, like, which is all very good, but we had, these 2 hour conversations every night, and we would always religiously do one of these questions as we were recording each other. And we got to know each other so intimately well. So it felt like the pacing seems very, very rapid, because I think from the point we met to the point I actually proposed was about 8 months. And for me, I'm super conservative. Like, if you were to tell me that like 10 years ago, I would think you're nuts. It would probably take me 5 years to get to the point where I did. But it was just, as we moved through that book and all this discernment that we did, it was just, it's like God made this person so well for me, and same vice versa. It surprised me.
You were both very intentional, and so that 8 months was chock full of really intentional communication and all that stuff. So
I mean, it sounds unromantic to say it was like a almost this intense interview. It was a little bit like an interview for a spouse. You could say that on one side, but it was so deeply intimate, and so it was just marked by just deep friendship and understanding. When you're telling somebody like this and trusting them with the deepest struggles that you've had in your life and how they've impacted you and how you worked on these things, and you're revealing these things to you, that you're putting them in a position where they can reject you right there. And when it's met with kindness and understanding and this mentality, like, I know, like, I got you. I got you where you are. I love you where you are, and I want to talk to you tomorrow. I want to hear more of your story tomorrow. That really bodes well for the future.
Okay, so how did you propose? Eva, you start first. Were you expecting it?
How did he propose? We were renewing our consecration to Mary, because we both done it before. So we decided, as part of something that we wanted to do together, is to renew our consecration. So we started doing that. But there was a trip that I had planned with my family to Houston in the U.S. that was for November. So we were going, part of the plans for visiting each other or meeting was in Houston last year. So we had all the plans to meet there. We were actually arranging everything because by the time we were supposed to be there, we were about to finish the consecration. So
Can I interrupt just there, just because the consecration date, like we were preparing for November 21st, which was a Marian feast day. So we wanted our consecration was like a 33-day thing. We wanted to culminate on the feast day, which was a Monday, which had us in this, we were on this trip in Houston, and we had been working towards this. And anyway, I'll let her finish the story, but that's an important detail.
Yeah. And so we were planning around that. We brought our medals and we brought our scapulars and we brought everything. He actually looked into times for mass and everything to be ready for that. It was such a big surprise because actually during that trip he was meeting the rest of my family too. He had just met my mom and my older sisters and so on, but during that trip he met my dad, right? Which of course was a big deal.
Oh, you met the dad.
So yeah, this was a big thing. So it was for a quinceañera for family that was in Houston, and then all of Eva's closest family were going to congregate there, and I felt like, okay, this is a perfect opportunity. We've got the consecration happening. We're all her family's there. I'm meeting her parents for the first time. I can ask for their parents' blessing. There's lots of things that we could do. So in my mind, it's just like, this is too good. Like we have to. I've got to do something. I made a big plan, and it worked.
Oh yeah, I
did. So did you pick out a ring?
So I picked out a ring. I bought a ring. I brought it down, had to smuggle it down and everything. So I had it in, okay, so I'll tell you from my perspective. So November 21st, consecration day was a Monday. Mm-hmm. And so I was looking into mass time. So I called up the cathedral there in Houston and I talked to the pastor and he said, yeah, we have a mass at 12:30. And so I told him my plan. I said, listen, is there any way that after mass, maybe we could, I'm planning on proposing to my girlfriend. And I have it in my mind. I'd love to do it in front of the Blessed Sacrament. And I can't think of no other place that would be better to announce my promise. He said, yeah, sure. He was really friendly and he was really helpful. As part of the consecration, you had to do a confession first, and then mass, and then you reconsecrate yourself. So we went to mass early. Now it was raining that day, and that's important because I had a ring box that was this big, and it was hot there. Had it not been raining, I would have to shove it in my pant pocket, and that could be really awkward. Like, how do you? So it was raining that day, so I could put it in my bulky raincoat. I could smuggle it in, and then we went in for confession, and it was a beautiful mass, and then I said, Eva had no idea what was going on, and I said, so let's wait till everybody passes, and we'll go to the statue of Mary in the narthex, and we'll go and pray our consecration together. Let's wait till everybody goes, though. It was a Monday crowd. It was only maybe 20 parishioners there. So anyway, other people were praying at Mary, lighting candles, and we waited for them to go patiently. And so we kneeled in front, and we had our little book, and we made the prayers of consecration. And then we stood up. When we were approaching the statue of Mary, there were pews on either side. She put her purse and raincoat on one set of pews on one side, and I put my raincoat on the other. So we got up. And I secretly went into my raincoat pocket and I grabbed the box and I put it in my pant pocket, but I
had no idea.
pointed myself in a way she couldn't see the big bulge. And then I said to her, I said, what a special moment this is. I said, we've been asking ourselves so many questions. I was reflecting on the 100 questions that we did. And we went to that. I said, wasn't that an amazing experience? She's like, oh, yes. And we were having this thing about questions. I said, then our parents started asking questions, and we had to answer all those questions. And so
Mm.
not an amazing opportunity for growth. I said, Rose asked us questions because we work with you, and we were finding. And I said, haven't we come so far? Aren't we just so deeply connected? And I said, have you ever felt this close in your whole life? She's like, no. And I said, well, I guess there's only one more question to ask.
Oh, I love this.
And I got on my knee,
Oh,
pulled out the box, I yanked it out of my pocket, and I opened it, and I said, will you marry me?
ah. Eva, what was going on? Were you in shock or were you excited to talk to you?
Oh yeah. Well, he was going through that. I said, oh, that's so nice. He's like doing like a recap of the relationship. How great is that? I just kept thinking that because I honestly had no idea, like no idea. And he's like, yeah, and we did these questions, and we did this, we did that. And I was like, this. Because I had no idea other than, this is such a nice moment with sharing this, something that is really special for both of us. So, of course, by the time when he said there's only one question left, and he got on my knee, I was like, he keeps laughing because he said I did the whole Hollywood thing, but I said I really had no idea. So when I saw him, I was like, I just could not believe. I was so happy.
Did you say a word yes, or did you just start crying, or what did you say?
Oh yeah, I kept looking at him and I said, "Are you serious?" Out of my own surprise because I was not expecting that. And when I realized that, oh my gosh, this is actually happening, I said, of course. And then.
And then the Blessed Sacrament was only a few steps, down in another corner, and we just went over there and we said a little prayer together, thanking God, and
that's wonderful. Praise God. So,
yeah.
And you did it right. And I don't want to embarrass you guys, but I know this is very important. You remained chaste until your wedding night, and that was also very intentional because you shared with me. You understood what that really meant, and it has a proper place and time.
Absolutely.
So, where did you honeymoon?
Friends of mine had fairly well-off people had a beautiful house on the beach in Turks and Caicos they just gave it to us for free, and we spent 10 days there. It was just bliss. It was amazing.
Oh yeah.
Worth the wait.
Okay, so I would love to hear more, and our time is kind of running short, and I know people have questions. And at the end, I want you to dispense some wisdom from your experience to everybody who's listening today. But one of the questions that came in, and this is really good, Chris, what was the title of that book, the 101 Questions? Do you remember, or the author?
Oh, I'll have to get back to you. Let me.
Yeah. And Catholic Match, we'll post it here in the comments for when people can look back. I know there's a few of them. If you Google, I remember Leslie Parrott had one of those that I read years ago. Good conversation starters to really get past the fluff.
There are lots, but this one was Christian based, which I like because it really involved. Yeah, it's called 101 Questions Before You Get Engaged. I'm looking at it on Amazon right now.
Okay. That sounds good. And until you get that, Eva, there's another question. Coming from Mexico, how long did it take for you to come to Canada when you got married?
Actually, I moved here right after the honeymoon. We got married in Mexico, then we went on our honeymoon, and then after that, I moved here.
And you didn't have any weird delays or problems in that regard?
No. Well, right now we're doing all the paperwork for residency. Everything that needs to be done. Actually, it seems that it's moving quite fast according to the current timelines that they are managing. But it's a very thorough process, right? Moving to another country, not as easy. Helps speaking the language, but there's always a process, right? That needs to be followed.
Okay, so we have another question. How did you make it long distance? What would you say to some of the viewing audience, some of the pros of long distance and some of the cons of long distance? Either of you, both of you.
Yeah. The cons is frustrating. Let's just put it flat out. You are. I think we're wired for real presence. But at the same time, a lot of the times you can get ahead of yourself. I think people can put the cart before the horse in terms of courtship. With long distance, looking back on it, I wouldn't change it for the world, because it was such an amazing, focused way to get to know somebody through conversation.
Right.
You have to get creative with the things that you're going to talk about. You can't just go and, let's say you're a little bit, you're shy to share your thoughts, and maybe you don't like to talk too much. So you could always organize a movie night when you're home, or you can go to the amusement park, or you can do all these things, and that's fine and it's fun. But conversation is how you get to know somebody truly, and working through life together. Absolutely. But in terms of like the initial process, I think it's an amazing way. So cons is a little frustrating because you're yearning for the real presence. Plus, it's a little bit of a tricky thing if you are growing close. You are seeing each other, like you must organize in-person visits. You have to. And then, the attractions can really overwhelm you. So to try to maintain, if chastity is a very important thing for you, you got to watch out a little bit for that. But the intimacy, the intellectual intimacy that you have with each other is amazing.
Intellectual, emotional. Yeah, Eva, what about you? What did you find that you liked about the long distance situation?
I think it gave us both time to appreciate more of the time we spent together, because and that's something that we were always, we talk about, right? That in the end we go back to our lives, but we also know that we were getting closer in terms of this. So I think it was also giving us a sense of understanding and organizing a little bit better our lives, because we always wanted to make time, of course, to spend with one another. And I think that I was getting to that place, right, when I was enjoying my life as me, my work and everything, but also this. And I was able to do everything, right, that I wanted to do. Also at the same time, that I was sharing all of that with him.
But I think that's our story too, because if you recall when I first met you, I had that previous situation, and there are people out there that are just perfectly fine having this long distance thing. They get their online friend, like a pen pal, and they can do it for years.
Right.
They can always lean on that pen pal to show up at 9:00 at night on their computer screen, go about their business and their life, and then just get stuck there in that place. There are quite a few people like that that are out there. So I would say long distance is great in the beginning, but it should you got to move it into real presence.
Oh yes, absolutely. It's the same with the visits, right? When you start to get close to the other person, you always want more time, because you're having such a great time sharing and doing all these different activities that you don't get to do because of the long distance. But of course, you also try to make the best out of it when you are together.
Okay, so here's an interesting question. How old are you both?
I'm 43.
29.
Oh, you liar. Haven't we worked on this before, Chris? Honesty.
Okay. Yeah, I'm 51 and she's 43.
Okay, and I'm the one on CatholicMatch that helps to address some of the older singles on here to not lose hope. You have many, many good years ahead of you. And would you both agree it's worth the wait?
Absolutely.
So how long have you been married now?
Almost 5 months.
Are you going to celebrate at 6 months?
I think we celebrate every month. We had in the beginning celebrated every week. Like teenagers.
Okay. Okay. So, have you had any big fights or scary moments in these 6 months of marriage?
Big fights, no. Moments, yes, because sometimes I think it has a little bit of an impact getting to know a new person a new place, and there could be at points cultural differences, right? The way we see certain things, the way we navigate through certain topics, but nothing major. And one of the things that we always had is communication, right? So I think has been such a great thing for us since day one, since we met. So one of the things that we always did is communicating. So by the time we got married, I think we were so used to being open about all these different topics that's been a huge help.
Both of us had worked on our baggage so well, I think, coming into this, that we knew that I knew intuitively, like if I'm doing something that might just be triggering, I'd be really sensitive to that, because it's just, oh, okay, that could be my baggage, could be this. So I was very open, because I think a lot of, I think particularly younger people tend to get defensive, and you kind of protect your dignity. I'm not the bad guy, I'm not this, but it's just like, well, wait a minute.
Not just younger people.
Okay, right.
No, but in general, right? And I think that's one, like you said, because we were working on ourselves, it does make a difference. I know that most people might be thinking, oh yeah, they make it sound so easy, but it's true, right? The more you work on yourself, which is why I think it's very important that no matter where you are at this very moment, you do what's getting you to be the better version of yourself.
And it really helps, like, for instance, the 101 questions and working with you and everything, is that you talk about your wounds and you enter into that person's woundedness and you love them there. And if that's introduced early, you're not just falling in love with this perfect image, like this person is holding a facade. You are from an early stage saying, this is a wound, and I'm inviting you into it. And this is the crappy behavior that sometimes can result of that wound. Well, then you have something to talk about. Like you have some level of sympathy, because you recognize this behavior or whatever it is as a symptom of a deeper wound. And then that triggers, sort of in my heart or hers, I want to help her as helpmates through that, as opposed to you better treat me better. It's not about me. It's about how I can help her in that place.
That's an important word, helpmates. We hear this all the time. Our duty as spouses is not to get each other to heaven. Only God can do that. But help each other get there. Help. And the first thing you do to help somebody is just listen to them and be real presence. Mm-hmm. Real presence to them. Okay, our time is way too short. I would like to hear from each one of you something that you would tell our still single viewers to make sure they do and make what they should not do. One do, and one don't.
Ladies first.
One do is be true to yourself and what you believe in, your faith. Don't be afraid to be who you are. I think that's so huge, because again, we're living in a world right now that everybody or most people are trying to do all these things so they can fit in. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They're willing to compromise something that they are for something that they're not.
You're so right. What's your don't? What's your don't?
For me. And the don't is don't lose hope. God is letting know He knows what He's doing. And I know it's so hard when you hear God's plan is always the best, His time is always perfect, but it is true. I always tell my friends, depending on where you are in life, that can be the best thing you can hear, or it can just get you. But it's so true. So don't lose hope. He knows what He's doing.
Good. Chris?
I'll start with don't. So what not to do, I would say, don't obsess. Don't let CatholicMatch and the dating world be your idol. It's something. The way I always looked at CatholicMatch was that it was a community of like-minded people. I'm gonna just hang my little banner there. I'm available. If you want to talk to me, here I am. But I do that in every aspect of my life. So whether it's making connections with friends and after church groups, or like just live your life don't obsess, because there's this temptation that when people get into this place of loneliness and they can look through the catalogs of
Right.
maybe
Right.
this person is the answer to all my happiness, and maybe that person, and why isn't that person responding to me? It's just like, look, it's just a place. God has one person in mind for you, and there's billions of people on this planet. Catholic Match happens to have a population of people there, like-minded people. God may select, might help you find or discover somebody there. It might not, might come somewhere else, but you're going to meet some interesting people along the way. So don't obsess. Look at it like it's a nice place to meet like-minded people. If there's a romantic connection that comes through, great. But I think that once you start getting obsessed, it can get toxic. So I would just say really resist that, because the attention that can come through it can sometimes be, it can
Yeah,
be.
no, I hear you. I hear. Okay, so what's your final do?
So I would say, whether you're on Catholic Match or just dating in general, just work on your baggage. Just about wounds. You are trying to make yourself a spouse to somebody else. You are trying to put yourself in a position where you're taking the responsibility of somebody else's life. You are there to help that person. You're there to give and to receive, but to give. So if you're going to give of yourself, make sure that you are a person who's in a place of healthy giving. You've got your ship under control. You've got your baggage.
That's excellent. Excellent. You know, I think there are a lot of people watching right now who are very, very sad that both of you are taken. Because you're both wonderful, and you can tell that you are friends and that you are kind and loving to each other, and that you did this intentionally and you did it right, and the faith was central to everything that you did. So let's keep in touch. We want to hear the future happiness of Mr. and Mrs. Delia. Maybe we'll have you come back next year and see how things are going.
Oh, after 1 year.
That would be very interesting. So God bless you, and let's keep in touch. And all of our viewers, thank you for joining us this month. We love to bring you good content. Catholic Match and I care about you and are keeping you in our daily prayers so that you too can find your forever love. See you next time.